House in Baltimore and Carolina, not only in my mind, but also in my body. Luke Jones and I have been out in Owings Mills all week long, and really strange kind of week, right, where, you know, the kicker misses a kick, because that hasn't happened around here since, like, Cundiff. And I had a long chat with Sam Cook on Wednesday out in the locker room, and I know everybody waited on Justin Tucker, but you know, to your point, I think after the game, Luke, this is one of those games where they have to go on the road and just win here. I mean, and put an end to this with Pittsburgh and Cincinnati around the corner.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think Joe Flacco said it best on Wednesday because, you know, I mean, and we even talked about this post-game. I mean, the fact that this was a tough loss, yes. Do I think it was a brutal loss in the sense that there's any shame in losing to the Saints? Absolutely not. I mean, the Saints very well could be the third best team in the NFL? I think you can make a good argument behind, the Rams and Kansas City. So there's no shame in it from that standpoint, but Flacco said, we're kind of past the point where we need confidence boosts. We need to win games. It doesn't matter what the statistics look like. I mean, the Ravens, we know how shiny the defensive numbers look like. We know how good the offensive numbers look in comparison to the last couple of years. But at the end of the day, what matters is the W and the L column, and the Ravens at 4-3, pretty good. I mean, especially considering how much they've been on the road and all of that. But you need to put yourself in good position down the stretch. And I've said this over and over from the start of the season. I thought 6-3 was the target going into the bye week. If you truly wanted to be in good position to win the division, if you wanted to be in position where maybe you can lock up a playoff spot, dare I say, week 15 or 16, so you don't have a 4th and 12, you don't have the immaculate extension in week 7, you know, in one of those scenarios where it knocks you out of the playoffs, then you need to take care of business these next 2 weeks. I think the Saints' loss is no big deal if they go to Carolina and win Sunday, and if they take care of business against Pittsburgh at home next week. Now, you might be saying, well, that's kind of a tall task. Well, if you're a playoff team, if you're a legitimate contender, at some point you got to start stacking some wins. You can't just go win-loss, 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 because, well, you do the math. That adds up to right around 8-8, which is not where you want to be. So I think this one certainly, you know, it's not going to be an easy trip, and I think Carolina, despite not having overwhelming statistics, I mean, you look at their numbers, they don't really do anything particularly great. But they're also not really bad at anything. So, and they've been a good fourth quarter team. So they've kind of been, I don't want to say the opposite, because the Ravens have had some good wins. I mean, let's be very clear about that. But as shiny as some of their stats look, you know, they laid the egg against Cleveland, and we saw what happened in the fourth quarter on Sunday. So they kind of need to, the Ravens need to find that extra little it factor for the fourth quarter to finish off games in the way that the Panthers have figured out how to win a couple games that looked like they were going to lose.
You know, it's fascinating you would say that, because the Ravens' defense has buckled a little bit late here, right, over the last couple of years. And this is a Carolina team that, you know, if the Ravens are up, I don't know, 21-7 in the fourth quarter, it's not enough, certainly not at home. And that's the part where this is going to be 4 quarters on Sunday, right? There's no blowout happening here either way, and you better hope that the Ravens aren't the ones down 11 points in the fourth quarter on the road in Charlotte, because I think it would really turn this season in a whole different direction if they go down there and lose on Sunday.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I'll go back to what I said last year, right around this time. Remember, they lost that game in Tennessee, and it dropped them to 4-5 going into the bye. The year before that, they started out 3-0 in 2016. I think many people forget that, and then they went 0 for October, and they're 3-4, and you know, they played better after that. But you just you lose too many games, and you just have such a small margin for error. And I still look at what the Ravens have to do after the bye week. Road games at Atlanta, at Kansas City, and at the L.A. Chargers. And I know the Falcons aren't all that good, but playing them in the Dome is a little bit of a different animal than if Atlanta's coming to Baltimore. And
well, especially if they're in the race. I don't know if they will or won't be, probably won't be, but you know, if they have a chance at a wild card, that becomes a different thing on December 1st, I think.
And I just think them playing on a faster track. I mean, for a one-off, if you're looking at a game that even if the Ravens are a better team than the Falcons, I feel pretty good saying about
the Ravens are a better team than the Browns and lost to them 2 weeks ago, right?
We see how that happens. So you have two really difficult road games after the bye, and the Atlanta one, I'm not just going to chalk it up as an automatic win either. So there are 3 treacherous games on the road after the bye. If you go into the bye at 5-4, or heaven forbid, if you drop this one and then the Steelers exact some revenge, it's looking really bad again. It's looking like last year. It's looking like the year before, where you have to get on a roll where you're practically running the table. So that's why it's so important for them to get these 2 games. Losing to New Orleans, as much as it's disappointing because they had a 17-7 lead, I still don't think it's a horrible loss. I think it's a missed opportunity. And if you miss that opportunity, you need to take advantage of the next couple. And if they do that, I think they're fine. I'm still feeling good about their chances making the playoffs and winning this division. But anything less than that, I'm really starting to feel like, I think the defense is better than last year. The statistics say they are, and the offense is certainly better than it was last year. But at what point do you graduate where you're winning games and stacking wins and not doing this one step forward, one step back routine that has been all too familiar over the last few years? So I think that was really Flacco's point when he was asked about, you played with the Saints as much as you did, and you were an extra point away from tying the game and sending it into overtime. And Joe said, well, you know what? We need to move past that kind of thinking. We need to get wins. We need to take care of business in the fourth quarter. And to your point, even if they have a 13-point lead in the fourth quarter on Sunday against the Panthers, you need to be thinking back to what happened against the Saints and what the Panthers did in Philadelphia against the Super Bowl champions. And there shouldn't be any letdown. There shouldn't be any semblance of, we've got this one. They need to continue to step on their opponent's neck on both sides of the ball. The defense played great against New Orleans for the first 3 quarters. To hold Drew Brees and the Saints to 7 points through 3 quarters, that's a terrific accomplishment. But what does that get you at the end of the day? Well, we're talking about a moral victory and a loss. So you need to do it for 60 minutes. And on the flip side, the offense, which personally I hold more accountable for what happened against New Orleans in the fourth quarter than the defense, you can't be in a position where you score and go up 10 points and then all of a sudden your opponent goes on a run and you go 3 and out. And then they score another touchdown and you turn the ball over on downs. And it was great to score the touchdown at the end, but they needed one of those on the previous 2 drives. And if they had done that, we'd be talking about a Ravens team that's 5-2 and having a chance to really put themselves in excellent shape going into
at some point I want a home playoff game, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. And I've said this, this is where, when we've always talked about this narrative about the Ravens being 1 play away, they've been close, and look, by no means have they been bad. When I hear people say that the Ravens,
what's really wild though, dude, is like we're going to Carolina. We never play there. It's every 8 years. I get together with McLean and all these people you can find out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault. The real difference between these 2 franchises, in a lot of ways, is we've won our 2 Super Bowl games. They've lost their 2 Super Bowl games. And in between, there have been some players, there have been some playoffs, there have been some, Steve Smiths and some Ray Lewises and whatever. But had the Ravens lost those 2 Super Bowl games, I don't know, dude. We're the Falcons at that point, right? Like as a franchise, or how you're thought of as a franchise.
Yeah, that's valid, and that's where I've said this before, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I think Ravens fans have been spoiled over the last 2 decades, and that's a testament to the organization.
Well, also really lucky in that they've squeaked into the playoffs a lot of times and gone on nice runs when we've taken busloads of people to New England and Pittsburgh and Indianapolis and Miami and all these. They've won road games almost everywhere except maybe Indianapolis in the playoffs, right?
Sure, but that said, and I think we made this point in some of the aftermath, some of the residue of losing to the Saints, that that history is getting just a little tiny bit dated. I mean, we're talking about the last 5 years they've had one playoff appearance since the Super Bowl in February 2013. So,
and they beat the Steelers. I got to point that out. I mean, they got it at least once, right?
Sure. But at some point in time, you need to get back to the playoffs, and you need to start building on that legacy. That's been really, really impressive. I mean, I've been very critical of decisions they've made, specifically on the offensive side of the ball over the last 5 years, and their drafts leaning so heavily towards defense and not investing more in some offensive players around Joe Flacco and the offensive line, wide receiver, et cetera. I mean, by no means do I just sit there with purple-colored glasses on, but at the same time, it has been a really successful organization. They've had a slew of success and prosperity, to your point, but it's time to get back on track with that, especially, I mean, for the future of John Harbaugh, for the future of Joe Flacco, for cementing the legacy of a Terrell Suggs or an Eric Weddle for his career. I mean, these guys want to win, and they need to get back to the playoffs. And to your point, you'd like to be playing a home game in Baltimore come January, not just
or two.
I mean, you'll take it as, hey, if it's the number 6 seed, you'll take it. I mean, you're right, because this team has shown.
Well, you'll take it when you go losing to the Browns and missing extra points to lose to the Saints, right? Like that's what you're going to get. If this is, you're going to go down and lose to Carolina this week. You're now playing for 9-7 and some hope, and 10-6 and a little bit of help, and waiting for the Bengals and the Steelers to stumble, or the Chargers, or scoreboard watching the Dolphins as they're playing the Bills, or the freaking Jets again. You know what I mean? Like all of that plays into how December goes. And to your point, Kansas City and San Diego, they're going to be must-win games no matter what. You don't want to be rolling in there at 7-5 and staring down a 7-6 if you lose a road game to a team that's probably going to be 12-2 at that point, right?
Right. I mean, and I'll go back to something that I wrote a little bit earlier in the week at WNST.net. I mean, the numbers look shiny. I mean, the defense is the best in the NFL statistically. In terms of the context of 2018, it's a great defense. It really is. I mean, and anyone who suggests otherwise, you just don't watch the NFL enough, because there are no great defenses anymore. Relative to everyone else, this is a great defense. Offense, much better than it's been the last couple of years. So, again, I look at the eyeball test, I look at the numbers, and say the Ravens are a better team, but at some point in time, and this goes back to something that we've talked about at a few points, they've been far enough removed now, even from 2014. There's only about, I think I did the math, I counted it up, roughly about a quarter of this current roster was on this team even 4 years ago when they last made the playoffs. So my point is, you need to graduate from this playing in close games, looking like you're pretty good statistically, and you need to win close games, and you need to pull things out in the fourth quarter, and you can't wilt. You need to be the better team in the fourth quarter, and that's where Sunday was an example that the Ravens are still learning how to do that. I think this team has the potential to not just be good, I think they have the potential to be really good. But really good teams don't go on the road and lay an egg to the Cleveland Browns, who, as much as we wanted to give them credit at the time, and I still think the Browns are in far better shape than they've been in a long time, we've seen them revert to the Browns, right? I mean, they've looked very unimpressive since their win over the Ravens. And then what happened on Sunday, I mean, it's great. Yeah, you had a 17-7 lead against the Saints, and the Saints are really good, and Drew Brees is a future Hall of Famer, but you got to make plays in the fourth quarter to pick up the victory, and the Ravens didn't quite do enough of that. So it's tough in that way, and you go on the road and you lose to Carolina. It's hard for me not to just say, here we go again. And I think to that point, to this point, that narrative isn't quite applicable, because they did win at Pittsburgh and they did win at Tennessee, and I don't think the Titans are all that good, but they lost to the Titans on the road last year. So I think there's been some strides being made there, but if you drop this one now, and then who knows what happens against the Steelers next week, I mean, it's really starting to feel more problematic. The saving grace, I will mention this, and it has to be mentioned, is the good news. It doesn't look like Pittsburgh's going to run away with this thing by any stretch. I mean, they've had their issues. They've played better. They're back in first place via the
dude,
Ravens.
You talk it all you want. You got to go beat them next week, right?
Yeah, sure.
At where they are and at what they're good at doing, which is not folding up their season Halloween week in Baltimore. You know, they haven't done that one yet. That's a trick we haven't seen yet, right?
Right. But my point is, I don't see the Steelers going 12-3-1 this year. I think they're going to be more in that kind of that 10-6 territory. What? 10, I mean, maybe they go 10-5-1.
Talk about stepping on necks.
Know,
I bet we're going to look up on Sunday and they're going to be beating Cleveland 31-13, right?
Probably, yeah. I'm not going to argue with you on that, but my point is, they don't seem in that. They're not at that same tier with where they were with New England last year, for example. I think they've come back to the pack a little bit, whereas right now in this conference, you look at Kansas City clearly, and I mean, say what you want, the Patriots seem to have righted themselves after their typical early season slumber.
I mean, everybody's shoveling dirt on them in September every year, right? But they
laugh,
wear
right?
it, though. But they look the part, right?
Yeah. I mean, you laugh because then they pick up a Josh Gordon, and all of a sudden they look like the Patriots.
It's sort of LeBron-y in Cleveland, right? Like where they never really started playing there until like January, really, right?
Well, last year especially. I mean, they completely retooled that team at the trade deadline last year in Cleveland.
Well, isn't that what the Patriots were kind of doing in September, sort of retooling things, figuring things out?
I mean, they figure it out. I mean, they are. I think that the term I would use is they recalibrate. They kind of they go into the season with their 53-man roster and with additions they've made.
You know what the craziest thing is like Gronkowski, right? Like they figure it out with or without him, and he's sort of like otherworldly when he's there, right? Like go back and watch the Super Bowl, which I've watched a couple of times now because I was in Canton and watching it, and sort of like that's sort of the thing that if Flacco had a guy like that went out there every week, more like a Gonzalez, a guy that really showed up. But with Gronkowski, you have no idea whether he's going to be there in the end or not. I mean, sort of like David Price or something. It's like sort of so good but so sort of unreliable that you don't really know what you're going to get, right? Yeah,
I mean, I think that's fair, but Brady just makes it work. And that's why, I mean, he's one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest of all time. I mean, that's how great he is.
And I'm going to say this again, and you'll remember this when you get gray and old like me. He's cheating right now. He's doing something. I've been watching this too long for 30 years through everything I've ever seen to see a 41, 42-year-old guy do this. There's some clear thing going on, and, that's just how I feel about it, and I'll probably always feel that way about it, but I've seen this act too many times. There's something too weird about being 41 and doing this to me.
Yeah, but if we're going to say that, just if we're talking strictly in terms of his age, Drew Brees is having the best season of his career.
Okay,
ditto
to him. Ditto to Roger Clemens and Andy Pettit and all the rest of them made a fool out of me 15 years ago, right?
Right. But my point is, Brady, and I get it, I don't find him to be all that likable either. And clearly there have been some things that you can point to, and sometimes his sideline demeanor and all that. But Drew Brees is as likable as they come. I've never heard a negative word about him. He's having a career at age 39. So I don't know. I mean, maybe as we're figuring out more about fitness and nutrition and things of that nature. I mean, it's not like their bodies have changed that they look like they're home run hitters in 1998 or anything like that. But
hey, man, people don't believe I'm 50 after I shave, but I'm not out, throwing 29 touchdowns in the National Football League at 41. So, and it ain't never been done before. And the TB12 and all the shroud of secrecy around Guerrero and all that stuff. I just think there will come a time later on down the line when we'll figure all this out. It's not now. Right now, it's Tom Brady has resurrected the Patriots once again, and they're going to be a factor, and you're going to have to go to New England and beat them in January. And if you're the Ravens, you try to make sure that's not the first week, right? Literally.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. So, but going back to what I was saying, I don't think Pittsburgh is in that top tier in the AFC anymore. At least they haven't looked that way. And I think their defense, talk all you want about the drama with Le'Veon Bell. I mean, James Conner's done a nice job for them, I think. But I don't think they're elite in this conference anymore. So that gives you a little more hope if you're a Ravens fan that the Ravens certainly take care of your business against them next week, and then you have the tiebreaker, and you're in good shape in that regard. You just got to go out and win games the rest of the year. So I think everything's still sitting right there for them. As I said, if they go into the bye week at 6-3, I love their chances to win the division. And can they do more than that? Can they contend for a first round bye? I don't know about that. That might be a little bit too tall of an order. But being 6-3 and then going into the second half of the season, you're not in a position where your margin for error has shrunk to the point where you got to win 5 of 6 to get in. Like they've kind of been in that kind of territory the last couple of years. So just take care of your business the next 2 weeks, and then always forgiven for what happened against the Saints in the fourth quarter on Sunday.
He is Baltimore Luke, and Luke at WNST.net. Luke Jones joining us here from Owings Mills. We're getting ready for Ravens and Panthers. We're going to be down there. All of our WNST coverage brought to you by our friends at Pizza John's. I got the big cup on the set today here. Pizza, pasta, subs, and more. Never read the cup before, but I just go down and get the pizza. I got to get down there this week before I go to Charlotte. I think I'm going to spend Friday night getting a little pepperoni pizza pie at Pizza John's, and it's gonna upset Luke, but it's not going to have meat sauce on it, so he'll be okay with it. 687-7733, our friends at Pizza John's. 50 years doing it, just as long as I've been doing it. Our friends at Cole Roofing have been doing it for 99 years, and Bill Cole's going to be here to play Dr. Melfi for me. It's our community and charity series. We try to do it every Thursday. If you have a candidate, you got a story to tell, something cool going on in the community that needs a spotlight on it, throw me a note, nasty at WNST.net. And if you need anything in the corporate roof space or the solar space, my friend Bill Cole does that. It is Cole Roofing and Pfister Energy, sponsors of our community and charity series. Luke, I would say this for the Ravens at this point and where they are. It's an interesting locker room in a lot of ways, and to your point, the Yondas, the Cooks, the Tuckers, the Flaccos, they've got rings. Then there are the Weddles and the Brandon Carrs, and then the young guys that we sort of associate with winning who weren't here when they won the last time but have been here 2, 3, 4 years and would like to win, the Brandon Williams types. Joe Flacco emerging as a leader in this case, where he was demure, he was quiet, he was not demonstrative, sort of seeding as a young, pimply-faced kid from Delaware and a 1AA guy, walking into a room with Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. And, that was a different place for him then. I know John Eisenberg wrote about it this week, and I'm going to get John on next week to talk about the league. And I've had some great Charlotte writers on. If you haven't been out to the buyatoyota.com audio vault or listening this week, go listen to what Tom Sorensen has to say. Please go check out Joe Person from The Athletic in the audio vault, brought to you by Buy a Toyota. I would just say this. Flacco as a leader should be something we're talking about at $25 million and maligned and Lamar Jackson. It's what he should be doing, and I know he needs to go out and throw more touchdowns and lead more offense and all of that stuff, but I do like that that's where he is in his 30s, because I think this is sort of the next level for him. And I've always been bullish on him, and I probably have oversold on him because I like him so much. I like his integrity so much. And I think that this is one of those times where if they're still playing on January the 20th for whatever reason, Flacco's going to be the straw that stirs the drink, and as he should be, having collected $100 million so far, right?
Yeah. I mean, we've said it all along. Just because other variables haven't been taken care of to a proper degree around Joe Flacco, that doesn't mean that Flacco hasn't needed to play better. He has. I mean, he needs to play better. Going into the season, he needed to play better than he did in 2017 or 16 or 15. I mean, it's been mediocre. There's been good. There's been some good. And certainly for everyone that was crushing him last year, go back and look at his numbers over the final 6 or 7 games when, by all accounts, he was finally healthy, or at least healthier than he had been early in the season, and the numbers were much more respectable. So we've kind of seen that progression that started late last season, and then the Ravens made some of the additions that they did. They added James Urban, which I still think is one of the more undersold parts of this. I mean, we've talked a lot about Lamar Jackson naturally. We've talked a lot about the wide receivers and Joe's health being better, but I still think James Urban has played a big part in that as well. But you should expect a lot out of him. And that's why it's been good to see the Ravens do what they did to make that a little more, make it all a little more conducive for Joe to play better. And we've seen that. It hasn't been his best season, but it's been his best season since 2014, and it's been one of his best seasons overall, statistically in the regular season. But to your point, the leadership piece of this, I think a lot of it's just organic. I mean, Joe didn't need to be a leader early on. And let me be clear about this. I think Joe was fine in his role, taking on a leadership role with the offense. But when you have guys like Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and a Terrell Suggs in his prime at that standpoint, or that point, Haloti Ngata, you didn't really have a need, or Anquan Bolden, throw him in there, Derek Mason before that. You didn't really have a need for your young quarterback to be leading the huddle and giving a pregame speech and those types of things. And to be clear, Joe really still doesn't do the pregame speech kind of stuff. He's not a rah-rah kind of guy in that way. But
he's not Johnny Rah-Rah.
Right, yeah. He's not Johnny Hustle, right? But what you do see from him now is he has all this experience. He's been to a Super Bowl. He's won a Super Bowl MVP. He's taken his team to the playoffs 6 times in 10 years, which doesn't sound as impressive as it did when he had done it his first 5 seasons, but that's still pretty darn good. And you know what he also has now that maybe he didn't have quite as much of early in his career relative to how we look at it now? He's got more failure to talk about. He's had some not so flattering statistical seasons. He's had people calling for his head. He's had his own organization draft a first-round quarterback, which I don't care how the Ravens tried to soft-pedal that. That was a very clear message to Joe Flacco. Whether you think he's done or whether you're just wanting more out of him, that absolutely was part of that equation. So you have all of those experiences that Flacco has endured, that he's either enjoyed with the highs or he's had to get through with some of the lows. He's had the injuries. So all of that put together, what better example for someone like Justin Tucker, who to this point in his career had never tasted any semblance of individual failure. I mean, this guy, even his missed field goals over the last few years have typically been either longer than 55 yards or they've been blocked. And it hasn't been his fault. It's been some kind of breakdown with the protection. So what better person to... And I don't think there was a case where Joe pulled Justin Tucker aside and talked to him for 20 minutes. I think it was just a quick word of, hey, I've been there. Be true to who you are. Stay in your routine. Don't change anything about what you do in that way, and you'll be fine. And I think that's what Justin Tucker's trying to do this week, and talking to him and asking him about the need to keep his routine the same because he has been so successful throughout his career. That's what he's trying to do. And I think Joe Flacco's a perfect individual to offer a word to him. I mean, let's face it, just strictly from an individual accomplishment standpoint, Justin Tucker's been better at his job than Joe Flacco. If the Super Bowl run, that kind of being the isolated exception, Justin Tucker's been the best kicker in the NFL. Joe Flacco isn't the best quarterback in the NFL, and short of a 4-week period in January 2013, has never been the best quarterback in the NFL. But as a veteran in his 11th season and some of the trials that he's had over the last 3 or 4 years, all the criticism that, Tucker, you're going to have the idiots on Twitter that call him, are going to say he stinks and that kind of stuff, even though I think most fans have been very level-headed and smart about it.
I usually encourage people to vote on November 6th, and then I go on to Twitter in the middle of a Ravens game, or I see some of these Oriole boards, and I'm like, I can't believe their vote counts the same as mine. Like, I just can't believe how stupidly mean and impulsive people are in just their words. And maybe it's having come from having 27 years of words in front of other people that I have to stand accountable for. It's just an unbelievable thing. It's the part of sports that I never really understood, still don't understand. And quite frankly, it's the reason I don't take phone calls around here, because I just don't want to interact with it all week. You know what I mean? It adds nothing to my life, my sports fandom. I thank God for mute and ignore and block and all of that, because I don't subject myself to that so much. I don't see it. I know it's out there a little bit, but I've sort of purged of that after games, wins or losses, because everyone's a good winner. I mean, I went up to Sam Cooke after practice on Wednesday and had a long chat with him, because I thought if there's anything you should listen to from the aftermath, and I know we praised Flacco and everyone praised Tucker, and I know you put the picture up famously on the internet of Morgan Cox and Sam Cooke in the corner. I thought Sam Cooke's post-game speech at the locker on Sunday was among the better things that I've heard in the aftermath of any locker room. It was about 4.5 minutes long. It wasn't excuse-making. It was just like a real reality take on what just happened out there after 222 times of him and Morgan both being involved and doing it perfectly. And I said to Sam, I'm like, that was spoken like a 30-something-year-old guy with a bunch of kids and a guy who's won a Super Bowl. And other than winning a Super Bowl, Sam Cooke's lost every other time that it's mattered too. So, you know what I mean? Like, you only win one Super Bowl or two or three or whatever. Even Brady's got a fistful. He's got 15 other times where he didn't win. And there's a part of playing like that and accepting that and being good at that part, which brings me to Cam Newton this week, right? Like, we go down to Carolina, and one of the things that makes me itch about him and makes me root against him is kind of what a jerk he is. You know what I mean? And I do like the character of the football team, that Justin Tucker's a guy that's never failed, you know, in that experience, and now has that, where Sam Cooke held the ball for Billy Cundiff and also wasn't in cue to say, let's call a timeout. You know what I mean? He was also responsible for that at that point. So Sam Cooke, you know, you talk about failures and talk about successes and all that. I just thought Sam Cooke was really, really good. And there's a guy there that's been really, really good at doing what he does for a really, really long time. And we don't hear from him much, but when we do, we find a really high character guy there, a high integrity guy.
Oh, there's no question about it. But you know what? We can talk all we want about Joe Flacco or Sam Cooke or Terrell Suggs or John Harbaugh or any member of that locker room or coaching staff giving Justin Tucker some encouragement, fans on Twitter giving him encouragement, because for every negative comment I saw, I also saw 15 Ravens fans saying, this guy's been the best. He's won tons of games for us. Everything's
How many kicks is he going to make before he misses one like that? I mean, it's sort of stunning. It was kind of like Flacco playing every game until that thing happened, you know, with 30 seconds left to go and Hurst falls on it. You know, it's a matter of time before he was going to miss one. It's unfortunate it was that one, you know. I mean,
Sure.
When we do the math in December and have to go to Kansas City and it's 38 degrees that day and, you know, they're 12-1 or whatever they're going to be, you know, you're going to want that one in your pocket, and you're not going to have it. Simple as that.
Well, but also let's remember, even if he makes that extra point, there's no guarantee the Ravens are winning in overtime. In fact, I would have picked the Saints in overtime if we were re-picking the game at that period of time. There were a lot of plays that the Ravens didn't make in the fourth quarter that led to that moment. But it's great to talk about all the support he's received. This ultimately comes down to Justin Tucker and what's between his head, what's between his ears, and just moving past this. He has to be able to deal with failure. And that's one thing that it does make you take very ever so brief pause, because I'm very confident Tucker's going to be fine. But you can find some examples, whether it's Mike Vanderjagt, whether it's Blair Walsh for the Vikings a few years back, guys that were very accomplished kickers, and then something happens like that, and you see some of them, not all of them, because, hey, Adam Vinatieri has missed a couple kicks over the years, too. I mean, even though never in the Super Bowl or anything like that, but everyone misses a kick from time to time. The great ones are able to move past it, and they're able to compartmentalize. And you almost get to a point where, and I'm sure, I don't know if John Harbaugh would address this with other players, but at some point in time, you basically say, we need to leave Tucker alone and let him get back to normal and not keep trying to build him up over and over and over, because you keep doing that, it can sometimes have the opposite effect. It can sometimes cause someone to start doubting themselves or to wonder if people are going out of their way to express confidence because they're not as confident as they used to be in use.
Well, I'm still drinking Royal Farms coffee, if that means anything.
Yeah.
I haven't given up. And I would just say this on him. Of all the human beings I've met, he's a very peculiar character. He's
eccentric.
He's eccentric. He's quirky. He's all of the above. I saw him out Monday night at Matt Stover's thing. I saw him in the locker room Wednesday. I mean, I've been in his company twice in the last 72 hours for periods of time. He's just as quirky and peculiar and eccentric and normal and, sort of, I think, a little bit like that look in his eye after he missed the kick that everyone saw in HD after the game on Sunday. Yeah, I don't think there's anybody in his world, anybody who knows even a little bit about him, that thinks he's going to be thinking about that this Sunday. I just don't think it's in his personality.
I want to be very clear. I don't expect that.
Nor do I. Yeah.
But again, he's got to be no one else can get him back on track in the sense of that he just goes back to being Justin Tucker. He's just got to go do it, and I think he will. But until we go out and see that, and I said it to you in our Sunday post-game chat that you'd hope that Justin Tucker gets an early opportunity at a meaty field goal, a 46-yarder, a 49-yarder, and he puts it through the uprights, and then everything goes back to normal. But until that happens, there's going to be that little, ever so slight shred of doubt in the back of your mind, and he's going to want to get back on the horse. And I can tell you this, anyone who's been a competitor and has failed in that kind of a forum, and let's be clear, this wasn't Billy Cundiff missing the field goal in the AFC Championship. The Ravens have a slew of opportunities.
Yeah, it's week 7. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. That's the biggest point that
I bet he'll hit the 44-yarder in the rain in Kansas City to beat them or something, right? That's going to happen too, or he's going to hit the kick that's going to beat Atlanta in the
whenever he has an opportunity. I mean, I'm always confident in Justin Tucker, but until he gets back out there and his most recent kick is no longer that one, then it's going to eat at you.
I still think of those kicks like in Denver, Super Bowl, those were the real kicks, man.
Sure.
Like those were, and especially on the backside of Cundiff, because we've all experienced that as a community, all the players, Harbaugh, all of that. It's sitting out there. We just haven't thought about it in a long time, and now we're thinking about it a little bit. Luke Jones is here. He's Baltimore Luke, and Luke at WNST.net. Strategic Factory does marketing, printing, promotional goods of all kinds in one shop in Owings Mills. They can put a marketing plan together for you. You can find them out at strategicfactory.com. Also, I want to remind everybody about our friends up at Buffalo Wild Wings in Bel Air, because all the games are on. College football on Saturday, obviously the Ravens on the road on Sunday, as well as the World Series. Nice Caps bar up there as well. Joe doing a great job. Go see him for the all-new $5 menu on game days. They're up at the festival in Bel Air. It is B-Dubs and Buffalo Wild Wings of Bel Air. We're going to be educating you from our doctors, Dr. Kevin Crutchfield, as well as Dr. Craig Bennett, out at the LifeBridge Health Sports Medicine Institute in Owings Mills. You know where it is, right on the Foundry. You've been driving by it. You need to know all the world-class stuff that they're doing there. It's an incredible thing that they built out in Owings Mills for weekend warriors, as well as your sons, your daughters, if they're playing sports. Cal Ripken looks good on the billboards. You're going to look good there. You're going to be hearing about the expertise of Dr. Kevin Crutchfield, who's in the concussion and head-related space, as well as Craig Bennett, who's in orthopedics. LifeBridge Health Sports Medicine Institute with us as well. Everything we're doing is out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault. It is fixed. It's up. It's running. Thank you, Jason Werner, and our friends at Opus Media for keeping us running as well as the PivNet folks and the buyatoyota.com audio vault. It's there. It's up. All the good Carolina stuff is there this week, as well as some chats from the locker room that we've had as well. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook, as well as our YouTube, WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.